morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone tuning in from around the world. Welcome to our discussion, Partnerships for Inclusive Sustainable Policies, a side event organized by the European Commission Directorate General for International Partnerships at Mondiacult 2022. Before starting, I wish to inform you that this event will be held in 3 languages, notably English, Spanish, and French. Simultaneous interpretation is available in all 3 languages. Please, English to Spanish 72.9 and French to Spanish 72.1. Please return the devices after the finish our meeting. We wish to thank, in the first place, the European Union for organizing such an important event around the topic of international cooperation for sustainable and inclusive cultural policies. Moreover, thank you, Ministry of Culture of Mexico, UNESCO, and other institutions involved in organizing this event. My name is Victoria Contreras, and I have the honor of moderating this debate. Today, we have the opportunity to discuss current and future actions of regional mechanisms put in place to reinforce cultural policies for sustainable development. First, we will have a short welcome by His Excellency Mr. Gauthier Mignot as the Ambassador of the European Union to Mexico. Please come in.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A special thank to Mr. Toussaint Tiendré-Beago, the Secretary of the Convention on Cultural Diversity, and to all our panelists to be with us this afternoon, and of course to all of you present in this room or following us online. I am very pleased to welcome you today on behalf of the European Commission to this discussion on partnerships for cultural policies and how to shape inclusive cultural policies for sustainable development. As you know, the EU and its member states, we call ourselves Team Europe, always stand for cultural diversity and freedom of expression. Culture is not only the glue of the EU, it is also at the heart of our international partnerships and for sustainable development. Enabling cultural exchanges and cooperation among people is even more important in today's world to find common solutions to the global challenges we all face. This is why cultural relations are an integral part of the EU's investment initiative, the Global Gateway, where the EU commits to developing people-to-people connections, in particular for young people who are key actors in our efforts to build a more sustainable and prosperous planet. Cultural policies play a key role to ensure that cultural sectors can thrive, that funding for culture is sustainable, that all citizens have access to culture, and that artists, cultural professionals, and youth can co-create art and freely express themselves. Building on the European Union's own experience as a region, the lessons learned from the EU UNESCO facility and the culture program with the Organization of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, we would like to explore how regional cooperation can contribute more to common objectives. And I also take the presence of Naila Pariamachi on the panel, one of the EU Youth Sounding Board members, to highlight the fact that sustainable cultural policies also need to be inclusive. So thank you very much for your presence and participation.
Gracias, Embajador Mignot. Now, I also want to say hello to all the people that is connected by streaming at Mondiacult 2022. And I want to introduce and would like to give the floor to Mr. Toussaint Tiendré-Beago, is the Secretary of the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expression. Welcome, and thank you for helping me with the interpretation.
Victoria, and thank you to all of you for joining this meeting. Excellence, Monsieur Gauthier Millot, ambassadeur de l'Union européenne au Mexique. Madame Annika Floren, chef adjoint de l'unité jeunesse, éducation et culture de la Direction générale du partenariat international de la Commission européenne. Chers panélistes, Mesdames et Messieurs, permettez-moi de partager avec vous une citation des textes fondamentaux de la Convention de 2005, et je cite: « La diversité culturelle crée un monde riche et varié qui élargit les choix possibles, nourrit les capacités et les valeurs humaines et constitue donc un ressort fondamental du développement durable pour des communautés, des peuples et des nations. » Fin de citation. En tant que secrétaire de la Convention de 2005 sur la protection et la promotion de la diversité des expressions culturelles, j'ai le plaisir aujourd'hui de partager quelques mots de bienvenue à l'occasion de cet événement parallèle qui souligne spécifiquement l'importance de la culture comme moteur de développement durable. Et je voudrais particulièrement remercier l'Union européenne qui est partie à la Convention de 2005 d'avoir porté ce sujet important à l'attention d'un plus large public. The interpretation is available or not? Is okay? Okay, thank you. En effet, l'Union européenne et l'UNESCO entretiennent une coopération de longue date caractérisée à la fois par une vision commune et par des actions concrètes dans l'élaboration de politiques culturelles et dans la sauvegarde du patrimoine culturel, le développement durable, la paix et la réconciliation par la culture. Cette année, en 2022, l'Union européenne et l'UNESCO célèbrent leur partenariat de 10 ans. Au cœur de cette alliance, l'Union européenne et la Convention de 2005 de l'UNESCO ont travaillé en étroite collaboration pour le renforcement des cadres réglementaires afin de soutenir des industries culturelles et créatives et pour la promotion de la coopération sud-sud. À cet égard, notre partenariat a permis de mettre en place un mécanisme unique de banque d'expertise qui réunit depuis 2011 plus d'une quarantaine d'experts originaires de plus de 35 pays à travers le monde, de l'Afrique en passant par l'Amérique latine, l'Asie, l'Europe, l'océan Indien et la Caraïbe, et dont je vois et je salue la présence de certains des experts dans cette salle aujourd'hui. Cette banque d'expertise a permis d'accompagner des États et des gouvernements pour conduire des réformes structurelles nécessaires pour mettre en place une gouvernance de la culture et faire de la culture et de la créativité des leviers de développement durable. Dans ce processus, le renforcement de cette coopération, les communautés régionales et sous-régionales se sont avérées occuper une situation et une position clé. Et ces mécanismes contribuent au développement de la législation et des normes en offrant une plateforme régionale de dialogue et à ce titre contribuent au lien entre culture et développement durable. Je voudrais donc ici exprimer mon optimisme quant au fait que cet événement parallèle, qui est un premier pas vers un dialogue plus structuré entre les communautés régionales en vue de renforcer la coopération nord-sud-sud, qui est cruciale pour la conception de politiques culturelles adaptées à l'avenir. Je nous souhaite à tous des échanges fructueux et je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you, Mr. Tiendrebriago. Now listen carefully to the keynote speech by the Honorable Olivia Grange, MP, from Jamaica, is the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport of Jamaica and Champion for Culture of Caribbean Community, CARICOM. Unfortunately, Minister Grange will not be able to attend Mondiacult, has to cancel her participation because of the hurricane. but she has kindly sent us a video message. Please. Well, I hope that you are enjoying Mondiacult 2022. As a Mexican, I feel totally proud that Mondiacult is accomplishing in my country, and I'm sure Mondiacult 2022 will have a great contribution to the next cultural policies. So very welcome, everybody from all over the world. And in a second, we are going to show the video.
This is the global creative economy. For the Caribbean region, UNCTAD urges diversification, value addition. Excellencies, delegates, and observers, Mondiacult 2022 is an opportunity to recommit to global initiatives that actualize the role of culture in sustainable development. With the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development in 2021 and the World Conferences on Creative Economy, the world recognizes the global creative economy. For the Caribbean region, UNCTAD urges diversification, value addition, and upskilling in the creative industries through greater utilization of digital technology, including gaming, animation, and back-end film production. This is a gateway to new streams of income generation. The CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement provides greater market access for entertainment and cultural services to markets in the European Union. Jamaica is developing its Entertainment, Culture and Creative Economy Act, supported by the EU UNESCO Expert Facility on the Governance of Culture in Developing Countries. Jamaica will provide an enabling environment with the Creative Economy Act as a critical enabler for growth and sustainable development. Community dialogue, engagement, and capacity building being integral to the process. Our legislative reform benefited from peer-to-peer engagement with Barbados and others, which resulted in harmonized solutions for common issues. Protection and promotion of the artist will remain at the heart of these efforts, alongside integration of culture into development policies and strategies. Ensuring government, private sector, and civil society cooperation is imperative. For Jamaica, regional cooperation in culture is important. It must be included in national sustainable development planning and monitoring throughout CARICOM. We call for culture to be a dedicated SDG. The pandemic has taught that culture is the untapped antidote to recovery and an elixir for resilience for future global shocks, natural or man-made. Mondiacult must serve as a model of the new dynamic of partnerships and policies. The developed countries of the North must consider the 2005 Convention to facilitate, by way of Article 16, the movement of artists and cultural professionals, their goods and services, into the markets of these territories. This is true to the Convention's promotion of preferential treatment to developing countries to access the markets of developed countries within the protection and promotion of cultural diversity. Bold and forward-thinking action needs to be taken. South-South partnerships must open up our markets and economies and reestablish creative circuits for the reset of the creative economies of the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, and the Pacific. Jamaica produces and shares good practices and lessons learned regarding poverty alleviation and wealth creation through the creative economy. Our landscape abounds with artists with improved lives and livelihoods through cultural entrepreneurship and participation. So we need to re-engage historic Jamaica, Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, Mexico cultural roots as we reimagine cultural policies. We must build on Spain's Rotterdam Sunsplash, London's Notting Hill Carnival, and the USA West Indian American Day Carnival and Parade. Jamaica's swift reset of the tourism sector during COVID through the build-out of culturally resilient corridors and the diversification of our tourism offerings had our music and culture at the center. This panel discussion is a critical plank in our region's bold engagement and actions with our international partners. Let us leave here with concrete plans for exchange. To this end, let's arrange a regional post-Mondiacult conference with our global partners. Jamaica is ready. So together, we can take those bold steps into the future which we deserve and the generations to come. I want to thank you so much for listening.
Well, we send a thank you to Honorable Minister of Culture of Jamaica for that inspirational message. And now, let's start our panel. First of all, I want to introduce the panelists, these important people that are going to discuss to reimagine the cultural policies. First, Mrs. Annika Floren, the Deputy Head of Unit Youth Education and Culture of Directorate General for International Partnerships at European Commission. Welcome. Mrs. Angela Martins is the Division of Culture Head at African Union. Welcome, Mrs. Angela. Abel Aronategui, who is the Culture Coordinator at CCA-SICA, constitute agreement of the Central American Educational and Cultural Coordination Integration System of Central America. Welcome. Miles Young is the Director of Human Rights and Social Development Division at Pacific Community. Welcome. Also, Mrs. Naila Pariamachi, a member of the European Commission Youth Sounding Board for International Partnerships and Advisory Board composed of 25 young people from around the world that is advising the European Union on their international cooperation policy. Welcome. Also, Kimo Aulake, Ministerial Advisor, Ministry of Education and Culture of Finland, will intervene during the second part of the panel. Everybody, welcome. So now I'm going to explain to you, and also for the people connecting by streaming, how is the format of this panel. First, in this first part, with a first question, when we are going to discuss lessons learned for every region that all the people here represent. In the second part, we will exchange on how to harness emerging themes for sustainable cultural policies. So, I'm going to ask for the panelists, please, your answer will be in just 2 minutes, unfortunately, because we have to finish on time. So, participants here at Los Pinos and the people that follow in the streaming also have the opportunity to participate with questions. I'm going to take 2 questions for the panelists at the end. And now I wish you a great collective intelligence exercise because cultural policies need it. But it's more important that people need that cultural policies will be much more integrate for the people that works in the cultural policies. Well, let me give the turn to Mrs. Annika Floren. Annika, how does the EC support inclusive and sustainable policies for culture, and how does the European Union see the role of international or regional partnerships?
No, just to start that the European Commission is of course acknowledging the transformative power of culture when it comes to not only shaping societies but also in relations between countries and people. And it's on that basis that we are supporting culture and creative industries in more than 50 countries and regions over the world through grants, loans, capacity building. But those actions depend very much, to a large extent, on the effective policies in place at national level. So this is a bit the key idea behind the EU-UNESCO expert facility that we have already heard mentioned today. And we are investing in this facility to support, until now, more than 20 countries all over the world in developing and improving policies for cultural diversity and to put in place enabling environments so that culture and creative sectors can thrive. So the approach that we have taken is to ensure inclusion and participation, so involving both cultural actors and policymakers, civil society, to ensure that the policies are relevant, response to the needs, the country context, but also to secure buy-in for an effective implementation of the policies. So we have also fostered peer-to-peer exchanges between countries to learn from experiences and to adopt best practices. We have achieved a lot of promising and interesting results. Just to cite a few examples, for instance, here in Mexico, we have helped indigenous communities integrate in media. And in Uganda, the facility has helped professionalize the film sector and also to develop local contents. But policy issues are not only a concern of national interest. We heard this morning a reference to increased globalization and thinking here about matters that actually transcend borders, such as digital content, fair remuneration, or sustainability of cultural work. And it's therefore important to increase exchanges at regional and global levels to reach a common view. So with the EU, we have adopted an open method of coordination where we are inviting EU member states experts to discuss and exchange on priority issues and to come out with recommendations. And Kimmo will speak more about that in the later session.
Thank you, Angela. Just on time. Turning to African Union, now is the turn to dear Mrs. Angela Martins. In 2021, within the framework of the My African Heritage, you said, the African continent and its young people constitute an opportunity to promote empowerment and economic transformation through cultural and creative enterprises. What is the role of the African Union in this economic empowerment, and how could partnerships with other regional organizations strengthen those processes?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Victoria, for the question. Indeed, you might be aware that the role of the African Union is basically related with policy development and monitoring of these policies in the area of arts, culture, and heritage in the African Union member states. With regards to working with young people, we also have a young volunteer program in which we really work with young people in order to boost and develop their profiles in the arts sector and also in the other portfolios of the Union. In order to give expression to the policy that we developed at continental level, we work with Pan-African cultural institutions and also with international organizations in order to ensure that our member states are implementing the policies that we develop. For instance, I can mention the Creative Africa Nexus, which is a new program that we are working on the creative economy with the Afrexim Bank in order to promote all sectors, all areas of the creative economy. We also work, for instance, with the All Africa Music Awards, which is a platform that rewards young artists on the continent. And later on today, you'll be able to hear more about this great initiative in the area of music. We also work in the fashion industry, and we promote young people in their quest to provide or to work in the sector of the Africa fashion industry. For instance, the example that we have in the fashion industry is the Africa Fashion Reception, which is a continent-wide initiative, and we work with all fashion designers on the continent. We have done several editions of the Fashion Reception. In the coming few weeks, we'll do one in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and we also have done some time back at UNESCO, and we hope to continue with that. Really, just to say that as a policy institution, we ensure that the member states also design policies related to the promotion of arts, culture, and heritage. Examples of such are very many on the continent. Member states are using the policies that we developed as tools for their own development of cultural policies at national level. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. What's remarkable that all the work develops the African Union, so congrats. Ahora quiero presentar a Abel Aronategui y felicitarle por su trabajo. Es un joven líder del SECSICA en América Latina, América Central y el Caribe. Y le voy a hacer la pregunta, si me dan anuencia, en español. ¿Cuáles son las estrategias que lleva a cabo el SECSICA para preservar la vitalidad de sus culturas? ¿Puedes compartirnos una experiencia sobre el trabajo conjunto con comunidades regionales y qué oportunidades encuentras ahí?
Muchas gracias, Victoria, por tu pregunta. Para nosotros reflexionar sobre políticas culturales inclusivas necesitamos tener mucha claridad sobre qué necesitamos incluir o qué hemos dejado por fuera. Es por eso que en conjunto con la UNESCO hemos trabajado en la elaboración de la estrategia de cultura como palanca de la integración de la SECSICA, conformada por los 8 países de Centroamérica y República Dominicana, estableciendo áreas de intervención vinculadas al patrimonio cultural, a ciudadanía, interculturalidad y economía. Esto ha provocado el desarrollo de un proyecto para la salvaguardia del patrimonio cultural inmaterial de los afrodescendientes en nuestra región del SICA, que ha fomentado incluso ese trabajo articulado con otras regiones, y es por eso que Cuba se ha integrado ya a este proyecto y próximamente México también se va a estar integrando a este proyecto para poder generar ese inventario de las tradiciones intangibles de los afrodescendientes para sobre todo fomentar el desarrollo económico en las comunidades. Esto definitivamente evidencia la necesidad de poder generar integración no solo entre países de alguna subregión, sino sumando otras regiones, porque en el caso de nuestra región de América Latina y el Caribe tenemos mucho en común y necesitamos empezar a articular esfuerzos para generar acciones en favor de la gente.
Muchas gracias, Abel. Muy inspirador. And now I switch to English again. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Miles Young. The word is yours, and let me ask you, does CPC see opportunities to reinforce your cooperation with other sub-regional or regional communities? What topics would you like to address together?
Thank you very much, Victoria, for that question. But before I respond, can I just say that I feel very honored and privileged to be on this panel with such distinguished speakers. I think the answer to your question needs to be considered in the context of 3 recently endorsed regional strategies in the Pacific. The first is the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. The second is the SBC Strategic Plan 2021 to 2032, And the third is the Pacific Regional Culture Strategy 2022 to 2032. Now, the 2050 strategy is the overarching sustainable development framework for the Pacific, while the SBC Strategic Plan reflects SBC's work program over the next 10 years. And SBC is an intergovernmental organization similar to the African Union, and the work that we deliver to our 22-member Pacific Island countries and territories is similar to how the African Union works with its members. And I mentioned these two strategies, the 2050 strategy and the SBC strategic plan, because relative to previous strategies, culture plays a much more significant and important role in these documents, especially as an enabler for sustainable development in the region. And the Pacific Regional Culture Strategy, which SBC led in consultation with our members, guides and facilitates a regional approach to culture, including through informing national culture strategies. So as these three strategies are rolled out, there will be plenty of opportunities, I feel, for cooperation with other regional or sub-regional communities. And just hearing the examples that have been rolled out, including the examples of the Creative Economy Act from the Honorable Minister for Jamaica, really excites me. Just very quickly, areas of opportunities for collaboration, COVID-19 response, I think, is an obvious one. The culture and the culture sector, creative industries were obviously, like other parts of the world, adversely impacted by COVID-19. They are currently in the margins of the economy, so working to strengthen them, I think, will be important as we move out of this COVID-19 era. Addressing climate change is another obvious example. There's growing recognition on the value and contribution of traditional knowledge to climate change adaptation and mitigation. There's a need to strengthen awareness, efforts to address climate change impacts on culture, cultural heritage, natural heritage, and the potential loss of intangible cultural heritage and languages associated with displacement and climate migration. Just a couple of other things. Just this morning, I had a conversation with UNESCO around possible cooperation or collaboration on strengthening data and statistics for culture in the Pacific. So already there's been some discussions there. I've also had some conversations on possible collaboration in relation to supporting Pacific Island countries with implementation of commitments and obligations under the ICH Convention, and also to access funding, which is available under the convention. I mentioned the Pacific Regional Culture Strategy that's just been endorsed maybe 3 months, so the rollout of that strategy, again, there could be opportunities for collaboration. And then the final thing I want to mention is that some of you may be aware of the Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture. It's the largest regional convening of its kind. There's been some recommendations following a major review of it to see how we can strengthen the festival and ensure that it delivers on sustainable benefits for the region. And we're in the process now of implementing those recommendations. And again, I see that there might be some opportunities for collaboration, lessons learned, technical assistance, and other forms of collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. A thought for thought. So, as you see in this first round, what was the most important? I think the idea of building plural agendas in our regions, but not only plurals, also intersectorial agendas. During the next part of the panel, we will more in deep into the content of inclusive and sustainable policies. On the importance of youth, allow me to introduce Naila Pariamachi from Peru. She is founder and director of Art Changemakers. Naila, please, I would like to invite you to share some remarks on how you embrace the role of youth in the elaboration of cultural policies.
Thank you very much for the floor, Victoria. Some people that are seeing me right now will think on the answer of the question in whether approaching to cultural policies, to youth, or to sustainable development, but hardly the three of them all together. So let me show you some examples from my short experience. So in the middle of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, during the quarantine, seeing the lack of access to cultural resources, seeing the increased barriers to quality education, and also seeing the consequence of the quarantine in the socio-emotional issues on the people, I started together with a group of young volunteers a project called Art Change Makers, in where we've been able to give free art education to kids along all the Latin American region, not only creating spaces for recreation, but also spaces where they can learn sustainable development through art. So this is one example, and another one I want to point out is I have been part as a beneficiary of the Sinfonía por el Perú, which is a system of orchestras and choirs in Peru, who I can say from my own experience that really changed life of thousands of young people, including my own life. So when I'm talking about youth, I will ask you to include youth in the cultural agenda, not only from supporting youth, emerging artists, giving them fair working conditions, but also to support their own initiative. As you can see, there are many ways that you can mix these three subjects, youth, culture, and sustainable development, and there are infinite possibilities for us to be known or to be created. So following this point, I would like to ask you to invest in youth, to promote their work, to visualize their work, and to identify them. Because youth are going to be in the front and leading the following next cultural policies. Thanks.
Thank you, Naila. She is amazing, and she is only 19 years old. So, thank you, Naila. It was amazing. Now, it's again the turn for Miles Young. Miles, going to ask you. You mentioned in last question UNESCO's 2005 convention. Please share with us the importance of involving civil society to be included to reinforce cultural governance.
Thank you, Victoria. I mean, obviously, it's very important. But how do we give effect to that? How do we realize the importance of it in real terms? I'm not sure how many of you are aware of SBC, but SBC, as I mentioned earlier, is an intergovernmental organization. We provide technical assistance, capacity building to our 22 members across the Pacific. But one of the ways in which we ensure that our work is inclusive, including in relation to culture, is that under our strategic plan, we have included what we call a people-centered approach to our work. And for SBC, people-centered approach has 4 components. One is human rights approach, gender equality and social inclusion. There's also culture for development and sustainable environmental considerations. So SBC works across 22 sectors. We have around 10 or 11 divisions in fisheries, in agriculture, in public health, in education, and various others, climate change. And so the idea is to ensure that as our technicians, as our technical people and our scientists go out to the field to deliver on the hard science work, that they marry that with the people-centered approach to ensure that young people are involved, LGBTQI plus communities, persons with disability, etc. Gender equality is a big part of that people-centered approach as well. And we've also ensured that this is measurable. So it's not just an approach that we take, but it's also measurable. So against our MEL framework, we have indicators to measure how we're achieving this. So it's through that people-centered approach. There are other strategies as well, but for me, that's the key one. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Miles. Now, I'm going to ask you again in Spanish to Abel. Abel, ¿qué mensaje quieres dar a los responsables de las políticas culturales para mejorar las condiciones de los artistas y trabajadores de la cultura y especialmente para los jóvenes? Es tu turno.
Muchas gracias. Yo creo que lo importante es tomar la decisión de hacer una inversión en jóvenes. Necesitamos que las autoridades y los tomadores de decisiones tomen en cuenta dentro de su planificación el enfoque diferenciado hacia la juventud como algo indispensable. Esto va a provocar incluso un proceso creativo e innovador, y por ello quiero contarles una experiencia en el caso de la SECSICA. Con el apoyo de UNESCO, ya por 2 años consecutivos hemos realizado el Encuentro Cultural de Jóvenes de la región SICA, donde han surgido declaraciones importantes sobre patrimonio cultural, sobre economía creativa, e incluso los jóvenes han exigido a las autoridades la elaboración de una política cultural para juventudes. Eso nos ha llevado a iniciar este proceso para poder dar una respuesta diferenciada para las juventudes. Recordemos que si bien es cierto, somos seres humanos, pero no todos somos iguales, somos diferentes, y es importante que no solo dentro de los tomadores de decisiones en las instituciones de cultura, sino también que en la cooperación internacional empecemos a ver de forma indispensable la interseccionalidad de las personas, la diversidad de las personas, saber que nuestros proyectos, nuestros planes y nuestras políticas deben tener enfoques diferenciados, el étnico para abordar a las poblaciones indígenas y afrodescendientes, de las personas con discapacidad, las poblaciones LGBTIQ, los migrantes, niños y niñas, jóvenes en particular. Entonces necesitamos empezar a incluir de manera indispensable estos enfoques diferenciados para tener políticas certeras, y cierro esta intervención también recomendando a modo de mensaje esa articulación necesaria que hay que hacer con los gobiernos locales. No podemos trabajar solamente desde la cooperación internacional con los gobiernos nacionales si no incluimos a las autoridades locales que están en el territorio de donde parte esa riqueza de la diversidad cultural. Entonces necesitamos empezar a incluir también a las autoridades locales en estos diálogos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Abel. Muy importante las voces de las juventudes en este panel. La verdad que felicito a la Comisión Europea por traerlos aquí a hacer un diálogo intergeneracional. Now is the turn to Angela Martins. Angela, how are you planning to promote local cultural content from diverse territories and languages that Africa represents? And gender equality, because the gender perspective is pretty important in analog and digital forms.
Thank you again for the question, Victoria. In line with the implementation of our policies, you will agree that promotion and consumption of local content is really key in order to boost African or other identities. One of the key policies of the African Union is the Plan of Action on Cultural and Creative Industries that calls for activities in the sector which commemorate, celebrate, and improve lives, empower people, increase their self-esteem, provide entertainment, and foster social interaction, whilst at the same time promoting the use of ICTs and digital platforms for the transmission of local content. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we promote this kind of policies that the African Union develops in the member states, and we also promote the use and consumption of local content in the countries. Another issue that was raised is the issue of languages. Africa is a vast continent with too many languages. We have an institution which is dedicated to the promotion of African languages, which is the African Academy of Language, and it's currently working towards promoting most of these languages. Recently, the Assembly of the African Union endorsed one of our languages, which is Kiswahili, as a working language of the Union. So we are in the process of training teachers and other stakeholders in order to use this Kiswahili language at national level. So this will also impact in the promotion of local content of the creative economy. With regards to gender, we have a gender directorate at the AU, which is basically geared to promote gender issues. For instance, we have a decision of the Assembly which refers to having 50-50 parity at the Union, and we are working towards that. And also through the program that I mentioned on the young people, we also empower young girls, and in the creative sector also we empower them. We've been having in the Division of Culture, for instance, many young ladies who have been supporting the work of the division at continental level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela Martins. So next, I would like to give the floor to Kimo Aulake. Kimo, please, could you share the recommendations from the report from the Open Method of Coordination Group of European Union member states experts on the cultural dimension of sustainable development?
Yes, thanks a lot, Victoria. This will be my first and last intervention in this panel, so let me try and reply by offering you the following perspective, a vision. Also, as we heard from colleagues today, there are a number of inclusive and sustainable policies. There are plenty of partnerships. But the reality is that most of policy development is not about phenomenon-based things. It's piecemeal, it's compartmentalized, it's fragmented. And when it comes to culture and sustainability, what we say in our report, and by the way, my dear co-chair Christine Merkel is sitting right here on the second row, what we say is that culture is indeed a very visible elephant in the Agenda 2030 room, and this is absolutely true. The thing, kind of a slogan that emerged in our group was that it's all about transformation. What do we mean by that? Well, we simply mean that the best by date of humanity was basically yesterday. Unless there is a dramatic and rapid, immediate change, transformation in our lifestyles, in consumption and production and consumption, the humanity as we know it will not survive too many years. The future is grim, but it will be short. So we need transformation, and you cannot have transformation without being able to touch people's emotions and make them feel connected to nature, to each other, to their institutions. And there is a huge power of culture. What we say towards the end is that with its extraordinary convening and storytelling power, culture is simply a fundamental asset for innovation for a livable, sustainable future. Culture is needed as a catalyst and accelerator of multifaceted changes today and tomorrow. Hence, it is high time that we solve the problem of the absurd underuse of cultural power for sustainable development. This is the cultural courage for change required today.
Well, thank you, Kimo. It was remarkable. And now, unfortunately, we are going to almost finish, but before that, I would like to take two questions from the audience. Especially, we have here people in the field, in the row zero. If something of you want to ask to our panelists something, please let us know. Who want to ask something? No questions? I can't believe it. Okay, well, now, our panelists will give you final recommendations in this sequence. First, Annika Floren, then Angela Martins, then Abel Arunategui, then Miles Young, Naila Pariamachi, and Kimo Alake. You have just 1 minute to send some highlights to audience and also to the people that is connected by streaming. Annika.
Be done and should be done at national level, but it's important that that good practices are shared beyond, and that goes beyond the national borders. Also considering that many markets are actually regional, so it's really relevant to have these regional conversations. One word that I heard a lot during this panel is the word inclusivity, and I really want to thank Naila for sharing her perspectives from a young person. And the European Commission, we will adopt our first EU Youth Action Plan in External Actions next week. And I can promise you that youth engagement, participation, youth empowerment will remain very high on our agenda. So just to say that we are looking forward, we would be very willing to continue these conversations and develop new ways of working together, building on our experience both from the EU and with organizations like UNESCO and others. So thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Angela Martins.
Thank you, Victoria. As we promote the creative economy for sustainable development in the African continent and in the world, one key area which we would like to focus on is, as it was mentioned this morning by the DG of UNESCO, the combating of illicit trafficking in cultural property and also the restitution of heritage resources is really key for us at the continent. We have developed a common African position on restitution of heritage resources, and we would like to really cooperate with states in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Abel?
Gracias. Yo creo que Mondiacult, más allá de llevarnos a un espacio de reflexión, Mondiacult nos debe llevar a la acción. Por eso quiero hacer una propuesta o un llamado a la acción, y es que podamos crear un mecanismo de seguimiento a este diálogo para que podamos crear una comunidad de intercambio de buenas prácticas, de lecciones aprendidas, porque hay mucho que compartir, hay mucho que hacer de manera conjunta, y yo creo que es lo que tenemos que aprovechar en el marco de este espacio, de que no nos vayamos de aquí de un panel más, de un diálogo más, sino de ver qué podemos hacer de forma conjunta, y por eso mi propuesta iría en ese sentido, tanto para la UNESCO como a la Comisión Europea, que podamos crear ese mecanismo de seguimiento para profundizar muchísimo más a partir de lo que han compartido mis colegas y yo en este panel. Gracias.
Gracias, Abel. Miles.
Thank you, Victoria. I just want to endorse and support Abel's suggestion. I think that's a fantastic one. As I said, just listening to the other panelists and the Honourable Minister, I mean, there's so many activities and projects and programs out there, and getting it all together under the one roof, if you like, would be very, very, a very positive step. But I also just want to touch on what Kimo said around transformation. And I think the other point you made, Kimo, is around coordination. And I think Angela mentioned that, Annika mentioned that as well. That is absolutely key. And I think that's what we're trying to do in the Pacific. Whether we're successful or not, I don't know. But to ensure that the various strategies and frameworks that we develop are mutually reinforcing and integrated in some ways. I mentioned 2050 strategy, the SBC strategy, the regional culture strategy, the work that UNESCO and others are doing, and the UN agencies in the region as well, and the various crop agencies, what we call the regional organizations in the Pacific, that we all ensure that our different frameworks, and there are a lot of frameworks in the Pacific, are coordinated and mutually reinforcing, and culture underpins all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. Naila, it's your turn.
Muchas gracias, Victoria. Yo concuerdo muchísimo con todo lo que han ido comentando los distintos panelistas, pero además me gustaría incluir que el día de mañana, ¿no?, las instituciones privadas, las instituciones públicas, distintas organizaciones, nos pongamos a trabajar para identificar también a muchos más jóvenes. No solamente apoyarlos, también establecer indicadores de inclusión juvenil en las culturas políticas. Y bueno, nuevamente resaltar el trabajo que ha ido haciendo la Comisión Europea por crear el Youth Sounding Board. Sin duda, un espacio que me ha permitido hablarles hoy en día y un espacio que debe ser replicado en las distintas esferas de no solamente las políticas culturales, sino en todas las distintas esferas de la política. Y eso, el cambio empieza mañana y bueno, el punto de inicio empieza con ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Naila. Es impresionante. Kimo.
I forgot to say that actually our brand new report, or the executive summary, is available here in this room, at least on this table. And this Stormy Times report, it offers 11 messages, no more, no less, 11 messages for and from Europe. And these messages are intended to be action spaces as well as transformation pathways. I think when you have a look at them, they are kind of very easy to grasp. There's nothing too special, but underutilized, a lot of potential remaining. And my final point is that our OMC group, and the name of it, is the cultural dimension of sustainable development. Think, when you talk about cultural dimension of sustainable development, you imply automatically that you are part of sustainable development. You are not an enabler. You can be that. You are not a driver, you can be that, but you are part of the phenomenon itself. Sustainable development has a cultural dimension. It's just not been used so far.
Thank you, Kimo. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Thank you, people that is connected by streaming. We look forward to your continuous engagement in this conference and beyond, because Mondiacult doesn't finish here. That is the commitment. And thank you to all the viewers at home for following this stimulating discussion. It's certain that 2022 will be a turning point for the policy area of global cultural policies. What became clear today is that culture holds a place in a sustainable development, but also in the middle of the development, and should be included and should be clear for all the audiences, not only for people that is involved with the cultural policies. We appreciate your generosity and commitment to improve cultural policies. I invite everyone to continue with the activities agenda of Mondiacult 2022. Thank you again, European Union, Ministry of Culture of Mexico, UNESCO, and institutions involved in holding this debate and participants. Thank you. Gracias.